limitations on participation. We were funding and covering the costs of as many dual enrollment courses as a student wanted to enroll. With some guidance from the AIB and just the challenges of it being sustainable. You'll notice a little bit of a renorming for the fall of this school year in 25-26 because that's where we put in some guardrails of we're going to cover 2 courses per semester. And that must be from an established list. And those 2 lists, the established list that we have for both the early college program and the dual enrollment program are the same. So we did control the courses in which we would cover the cost. But we do know that from our participation numbers, we have lots of students taking additional coursework, and they are free to do so, but it's at the cost of the student and the student's family as well. So just wanted to kind of point out that obviously, you know, we've had great participation. It really peaked in the 24-25 school year, a little bit of a renorming this year, but these are still, I know this is a fiscal note, but going back to the participation numbers, we still have great participation in dual enrollment and early college. So we're very excited about the 17 students that are in this current group and very excited about the 50 or more who are interested in the early college program moving forward. So with that, I'll pause, and if there's any questions that the team can answer, we'll be more than willing to do so.
Any questions by my colleagues? Dr. Malvo?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Back at the dual enrollment slide, it has that there's only in-person classes that are offered for CCR standard, so no DL classes, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but I'm just trying to understand what's the rationale behind that they cannot do a distance learning class and do the dual enrollment?
So there are some of the courses for dual enrollment are virtual.
Oh, good. Okay.
Are virtual courses, and as Mr. Widener had pointed out, you know, obviously there's complexities of when you take dual enrollment. If the course is offered your billing, that's great, but the course may not be offered, and then there's how do I get to the college? And some families have that opportunity to provide the transportation. Transportation is not something that's covered for this through CCPS. So some students do take a virtual option because that fits a little bit better with the schedule to be able to do that. Am I correct?
That's absolutely
thank you.
Good. That's good to know. Thank you. Another question with the slide for dual enrollment eligibility requirements. I noticed that missing from those different courses, unless I'm not seeing it, foreign language. Did you ever consider like a foreign language offering? And if not, you know.
So on the available courses for dual enrollment at CCPS expense. So Dr. Malvo, you bring up a great point. There are tremendous course offerings that exist at the community college. They offer a wide variety of courses that students can take. But the difficult piece of we had to, for no other reason, control costs and spending because it's just we couldn't continue an unlimited amount of courses. So with that said, the menu here, these are the dual enrollment or the individual courses that students can take. Those are the same courses as the early college pathway. Students could most definitely take a foreign language, for example. It would just be at their expense. And again, we've tried to put some restrictions in place to manage the expense because, yes, we do receive funding for every student that meets the CCR standard, but that's about $600 per student. And most students who, that does not cover the full dual enrollment cost, and most students might participate in dual enrollment, might also take an AP course, might also participate in a CTE program, and that funding that we get through CCR needs to cover all of those things. So that's the difficult reality in which we stand. But again, we would work with a student who wanted to pursue a course at the community college in foreign language, for example. But I will say to students, and please make sure as you're considering courses that might be outside of this menu, please work with the school counselors in your building to make sure that you are still pursuing the courses that are going to get you to graduation as part of that ECP that all students develop, our educational career plan. So our school counselors play a vital role in guiding students in the courses that they take. So
Yeah, and I would just like to add, thank you very much. I would like to add that although it may, like a world language course or any other courses not on this approved sequence list, although it may be at the family's expense, as long as they receive approval prior and they meet the eligibility requirements, like the GPA, for example, they will then be able to still we can transcribe that credit so that they can then have it on their transcript and receive the credit as well as the weight.
Great, thank you.
Other comments by colleagues? I just have a few comments. First of all, thank you, Dr. Rose Mintz at the community college for helping partner with CCPS for making this a reality for our students. This is my favorite blueprint mandate by far. Think of how many kids that normally can't go to college or can't afford to go to college can go to college. It is an exceptional opportunity for our students, especially those in our areas of poverty within our county. And so it's just a tremendous opportunity to save parents money and to give our kids a chance to taste college, excel, and get just a rapid head start on the path that they go after they leave, after their K through 12 journey. Thank you to Dr. McCabe, the staff, Ms. Fagan, Mr. Widener. Thank you for collaborating with Dr. Mintz and her staff to make this a reality. Because folks don't realize how much work went on behind the scenes to make this happen. It was an immense amount of work. So very, very grateful for you for that. Also, my message now is to the students. If you notice, there's some pretty strict GPA requirements here, right? Please take your courses seriously in your freshman and sophomore year. I have a couple of boys that didn't. And, you know, the choices you make in your freshman and sophomore year close doors for you in your junior and senior year. So please listen to your educators, listen to your school counselors, get your behinds in school. And, you know, so those folks that like to take a half day, all day off, you know, if we dismiss early, that matters. Missing that instruction, it really matters. It could really affect your GPA. Don't close doors before you become eligible for these incredible opportunities. And then thirdly, I'll mention, this is for the parents. Our state faces incredible budget issues. We have a $1.4 billion deficit currently. We had a $3 billion deficit last year. We have deficits approaching $4 billion 4 or 5 years from now. That's at the state level. When this program started, it was take as many courses as you wanted. And the state, not us, the state has really increased the rigor and the requirements to qualify for these programs. So I'm hoping that we don't see any changes that further limit our student opportunities here in Carroll County from participating in this program. But if there's one issue you want to lobby your state legislators on in Annapolis, it's to keep this program going, to not change the requirements where today it's a 3.0 GPA and tomorrow it's a 3.2 or 3.5. Because in lieu of the budget situations in Annapolis, that's a real possibility that could limit our students' access to this phenomenal program. So with that, again, thank you so much for your work.
thank you.
Next on the agenda is a presentation for Blueprint Resource Allocation. Dr. McCabe.
At our December meeting, we forecasted that once we reconvened after the winter break, we would return to implementation of Blueprint Resource Allocation, which we previously referred to as fiscal compliance. Consider those terms synonymous. At our December meeting, Mr. O'Neill shared a detailed presentation on the background and methodology of the work that has been undertaken with the APA, who are the consultants for the AIB. We wanted to lay the foundation so that once we returned, we could move directly into the details of implementation. And now the implementation is underway. This evening, Mr. O'Neill, perhaps with some assistance from Mr. Shockney, will share those details. They will share the major outcome from the work with APA, the base school model methodology, share resource allocations that we are undertaking for the coming year, and share the outlook for the final changes to be made in FY28. Mr. O'Neill?
Thank you, Dr. McCabe, and good evening. As we move into this, I'll say up front and then with one qualifier, tonight you get to see, and hopefully we can make it make sense in practice, why we've been sort of singing the praises of the work that's been underway since the waiver was granted in the spring with the consultants from the AIB. The name of the consultant group is the APA consultant, so we may say APA. And why we believe that what you're about to begin to see tonight is certainly way more favorable, way less impactful in a bad way than where we were this time last year as a school system. And so that continues to be the theme, and hopefully we can illustrate that a little bit. At the same time, I want to say now, and I'll try to say it again when we get to that part of this presentation, that's not true so much if you're one of the employees who is still impacted by the changes that are to come. There still will be changes this year coming, fiscal 27, and the fiscal year after that, fiscal 28. But those changes overall will be significantly less burdensome to the school system than where we were a year ago. Dr. McCabe shared that in December we spent a lot of time kind of laying the foundation of what was the methodology of the consultants when they came in. We don't want to do all of that again tonight, but just a couple of reminders here. These are bullets I think you saw in December. We pulled a few. When they came here, and this was sort of the foundation of how this turned out positive, they said, frame for us your major concerns. What led you to the waiver? And I think the superintendent had been very clear for a long time leading into the waiver. If you want to sort of put it in two buckets, concern number one is we have to have enough resources to operate any school. We can't starve a school of so many resources that it can't effectively run for kids. And then sort of the second important thing might have been we also want to limit as much as we can the impact on class size and or course offerings. Certainly at elementary, middle, that'll play out more as class size. At the high school, that could be much more about class size or course offerings. And so when they got here, they agreed to work from that point, to take those two things to heart and figure out a different way to meet the compliance requirements of Blueprint, what they call resource allocation. And so what we present tonight replaces that early work in the school system, This is a different thing. This is a completely different model. So everyone can, if they wish, sort of put that out of their minds or not look back to that work. If you remember, that early plan had sort of a tiered approach. We were dividing schools into 4 tiers based on the student populations, and in essence we were then creating staffing models, staffing formulas around those 4 tiers of schools. Tiers are gone. We won't be talking about schools as being in this tier or that tier any further. We'll be applying a base model to every single school, regardless of what the student population happens to be in that school. And so in that way, it's preferable. It'll become more clear, I hope, why it's preferable in general. But as I move to the next slide, don't think of this as a staffing formula. It is not that. So here are the base models from APA. They are different at every level. There are some variances between elementary, middle, and high. It's not showing up so great now on the screen, but at the bottom in red is that constant reminder that Mr. Shockney made me put in that this base school model from APA is not a staffing formula. Nobody should look at this list and say, my gosh, if that's all that's in a school, how can you be saying you can effectively run a school with these resources? This is more of it's less of a staffing formula, it's more of an accounting tool to get to the right numbers that would fall into each of the Blueprint funding streams or funding buckets, if you will. Those categories we spent so much time talking about, like foundation funding, the amount of money associated with every student who attends our schools. Compensatory ed funding, the amount of money associated with students who qualify for free and reduced meals. Special education funding, students who identified as through an IEP process of needing special ed services, or ML, multilingual learner students who historically we might have referred to as ESOL students who, for whom English is not their first language and who need services accordingly. This model is the accounting method at each level to get to the proper amount of funding in any school to be charged to the foundation program, to be charged to the base funding amount that's coming to us for every student enrolled. And so it's more of a process of you place the employees in any school into this base model, and there have to be some rules to do that, and we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, and there'll be more than this presentation to go, over time. You determine which employees at a school, real employees, actual employees with actual employee costs associated with them, fall into these base model positions. You add up that amount, and that becomes the amount of money that it's appropriate to charge to the foundation program. And then that model won't account for, at any school, at any level, this model will not account for all of the staff employed in that school. So once you get to the base model, those are the folks who are going to be charged to foundation. Other staff in the school, it's appropriate to then charge them to the other funding programs, special ed, compensatory ed, ML, and others. And that's, hopefully it'll begin to become clearer, but that's a major shift as an accounting approach from a staffing approach, a resource approach from before. And that does free up a lot of flexibility as to who can be charged where, and therefore that helps us go a long way to compliance. It's a much more flexible model than we anticipated, because what the state is saying through this model is you believed you had to, but we're telling you you do not have to show that an employee's time is spent serving 100% of the time a certain group of students in order to qualify that expenditure in that program area. That's a great relief to where we were before. It's the kind of flexibility Board President Whistler and others have been sort of requesting or hoping for over time. So how does this work? Every school will have more staff than the model would indicate. And so who fills these slots to come to the base model? In some places, that's going to be pretty simple. Principal is going to be a pretty simple one. Every school has one principal. The principal of that school, we're going to charge their expenses to the foundation. I'll just stay right on the descending lines. Assistant principal may be different at different levels. So APA is saying that at the high school level, it's appropriate to charge 2 assistant principals to the base or to the foundation. But our high schools may have 3 or 4 assistant principals based on the needs of that school, the size of that school, the special programs that might be housed in the school. So what this model is not saying is that if there's only 2 in the base, but you've always had 4, you have to cut 2 assistant principals. That's not what this indicates. It simply indicates that 2 may be charged to the foundation, and the other 2 could be eligible to be charged to other funding programs, Comp Ed and ML, for instance. And that's a lot of flexibility. Now, I'm going to stick with that example for a minute. Who are the 2 who get charged to the foundation or the base, and who are the other 2? We have to have very clear what APA refers to as business rules. You can't randomly slot folks into the base to make it work best for you on a school-by-school basis is essentially the intent of the state. So we need to have a business rule to determine where there are positions in the base model for which there are more than that amount in a school, who are the folks. There's going to be some variations about what I'm about to say, and there's going to be an official, what the APA folks call a coding book, an accounting rule book that will define this permanently. And what I'm about to say is going to sound so simple, it will be silly, because we've spent hours thinking about this and working with this as a team and with the consultants. And ultimately, we've decided, and they have agreed, that in most cases, it should be alphabetical, because that's about the most random approach we can take. And I'll try to explain why that's important. Every school will be different, because the seniority of staff will be different, and therefore where you're placed on a salary scale might be very different. The costs would therefore be different. What the state doesn't want to allow is for us to sort of cherry pick on a school-by-school basis, because in some schools it would be very preferable to us to say our business rule is that we'll pick the highest paid employees to fill this slot, or the lowest paid employees to fill this slot, because that's going to help us balance the buckets. We can't do that. When we're audited, we can't show that. We have to show that we had a rule, we adopted the rule, and that's the rule we stuck with. So in most cases, the rule will be alphabetical. So if Westminster High has 4 APs, we're going to start with A, and the first 2 who pop up alphabetically will become part of the base and the next 2 would be charged to other programs. That's how that generally is going to work. That will also be true of teaching positions. So on the very first row, because there's a lot of teachers in schools, how are we going to determine which teachers fit, and how does this even work? So this first row is based on a student-to-teacher ratio. The number of teaching positions eligible to be charged to the base or charged to the foundation are going to be determined on a student-to-teacher ratio. So we're going to take the number of students in a school and the number of teachers in the school. These are classroom teachers, so this wouldn't include, for instance, like special ed teachers who are funded exclusively by the special ed program. But in general, classroom teachers, we're going to do the division and say, okay, in this school, X amount of teachers will qualify for the base. We will go down the alphabet until we have filled the base model. The other teachers will be eligible to be charged to other funding programs. I see some nods, which makes me feel good that's sort of making a little bit of sense. You'll see a lot of specific positions. There's also some terminology that APA uses that we don't use in Carroll, and they're aware of that. There's some places where we still have to make some system level choices or decisions here. If I'm going to ask you to look at the 4th from the bottom row, media aid is the term that APA uses. We use the term media clerk. That's the position we have in Carroll County. They have zeros in the base. And again, this isn't a staffing formula, but it's significant, and I'll try to explain that a little bit. They say that in their view of the world, and their view of the world is based on work all across the country, by the way. In their view of the world, there does not need to be a media clerk in the base to operate any school. We have informed them that we do not necessarily agree with that. And so our position is going to be that we're going to code we're going to have a 0.5 or a half-time media clerk at every school in the county. So there's a variation that we're going to implement, and we're actually going to show that in a minute. That's already something underway. That's a decision that ultimately the superintendent's burdened with making based on a lot of input from staff and a lot of time spent on this process. But when we make a choice like that, when we make any choice to sort of not accept the formula as is, at the end of this process, which will be 2 fiscal years from now, we're making a choice that's in competition with class size and or course offerings, because anything that we charge to the base is not eligible to be charged elsewhere. It becomes less flexible. That's sort of a choice against the other goal that Dr. McCabe had from the very beginning of preserving class size or maintaining class size as much as possible. I also want to note that for the last 2 rows on the base model, and this will, I'm sure if our employees watch this, some may get alarmed, and all I can do is reassure them that it's premature. Those basically reflect the school level clerical or secretarial roles we have, and this is a place where we haven't had enough time yet. There's a lot of moving parts here to really work with APA to understand how they arrived at these specific recommendations for the base model, and we want to take the extra time to really vet that out and help us wrap our heads around their thinking and help them understand where we may be coming from. We are pausing on implementing those last 2 rows. There are no changes on the near horizon associated with that. So that's kind of, you can see the base model. I'm happy to take questions at any time, but as I plow forward here, why is this so much better on the whole? Why are we saying, wow, this is a lot better than where we were facing a year ago? This chart is hopefully meant to demonstrate that, and both this chart and the one that I'll show next are based on last year's actual expenditures. So basically last year's employee costs, person by person. This chart is essentially where our data showed at the time we asked for the waiver and received the waiver. And so the first column is the foundation. And by the way, we always say we have 40 schools. One of the things that grew out of the work with the APA was the mutual understanding and agreement that the blueprint, what Blueprint wants to get at for resourcing a school works well in a traditional school. It's a little trickier in a school that's more of a special program. And so mutually we've agreed to remove career and tech, Gateway School / Crossroads Middle, and Carroll Springs schools, 3 of our schools that are very much unique special programs. So that's why that number is 37 and not 40. That's by mutual consent. So a year ago, we could show that we were, MSF stands for minimum school funding under Blueprint, the goal of being compliant. We could show and did show we're spending way more money in the total. Like if you just go for the whole number, we're spending way more money at the school level than Blueprint requires us to do, but we were unable to show much more than we were spending. Most of it, we could code it to the foundation. We couldn't demonstrate that we could code it to Comp Ed, that we could code it to ML. And so we had 100% of our schools well above the minimum school funding requirement for foundation. But as you can see in the next 2 columns at the top, we had 0 schools that we could show were compliant or moving towards compliance for ML, and just a few that were somewhere down the road towards compensatory ed compliance. And that was largely because of the decisions that the superintendent and this board made in prior years to recognize in advance that when the Comp Ed rules, as the identification standards for Comp Ed changed and the total population of Comp Ed students rose all over Maryland and here, and with that came an influx of state funding, we tried to make our best estimates on which schools that increased funding should go into, and that's why you did see some schools progressing to compliance on this chart at the time of waiver. That's a reflection of that. But in general, we were showing that we were way out of compliance by reporting expenditures. That's why we needed the waiver. This next slide, using last year's data, is a glimpse of how different it is to apply that base model methodology from a couple of slides ago. Same data set, pre-waiver view, rough analysis of how these schools, how our schools would look just using their methodology. So what you're looking at on the screen is an estimate, but it's a comparative because the data sets are the same. So if we had been applying this methodology at the same time, this roughly would have been the outcome. We still have all of our schools above the required line. The black bar you see there reflects where we're supposed to be in terms of fiscal compliance or resource allocation under the AIB's policy. We're supposed to be at 50% there this year. That black line represents 50%. So we still have all of our schools above 50%. Actually, the black line's in the wrong place. It should be up 1. I'll have to change it and repost it. The black line should be above 1/2 to 1/4 or to 3/4. So all of our schools still comply in foundation, but now we're at a place where only 3 schools, that third line down, that third line down, 1/4 to 1/2 of the way there. Just by adjusting to the methodology, we go from almost no schools compliant to all but 3 schools appearing as if they would be close to partial compliance, the bar where it's supposed to be in this year. So that's a tremendous shift by methodology alone. This does not reflect any of the changes we're making or about to make. And so on the whole, this is a major, major step forward, and that's why we've sort of been singing the praises of the work that they've been doing with us. I'll move next to what we're going to do to implement. Are there questions at this point?
I think Ms. Zimmer has a question. Any other colleagues?
Just a comment, and I know I've said this a couple times now over the course of the last couple months, but first of all, I am thrilled to hear that the tears are gone, and no pun intended, but I think that is tremendous news, and I'm extremely encouraged by the base model. I believe that it puts safeguards in place for our schools with smaller pockets of Comp Ed and ML, and we're not going to see situations like that were proposed like last spring where those schools with those smaller pockets are getting completely obliterated of resources. So the fact that the ratios are in place, the fact that interventionalists are in place, this is really encouraging news. So I'm just over the moon about the base model methodology and being able to get CCPS there for that.
Thank you.
Dr. Malva?
Just a question I think that's going to still arise. You answered it to a degree, but again, and that's great, the base school model, but there are various positions that are not included, PE instructors, all sorts of things. Again, is this including only the positions that are necessary to run a school, and that's why those are in there, or just to make sure we understand?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Dr. Malveaux. For that first line teacher, that's almost all teachers. What absolutely isn't reflected there would be special educators, and then there may be a couple of others, but all classroom teachers would be reflected there. It's just sort of in the whole. We're not differentiating between one type of teacher or not. And that would include what Nick's calling related arts, so or I used to call the specials, which I guess is an old term now, but the music, fine arts, fitness, all of those areas that students go to throughout the day. That is there as part of the base. Special educators would not be included in the base. And I do want to, I don't want to wait till the slide, but I do want to talk about those changes that are coming now, and I want to make a comment about the employees as well.
Great, thank you.
So, okay.
Yeah, if I can offer a comment too, if you can go back to that previous slide, if you notice, the planning time percentages are only 20%. That certainly is not 60-40 teaching requirement for Blueprint, and I know it's not implemented now, but it's coming soon. And the other point I'd like to bring up is, you know, having 0 for media aid. I understand that's driven by APA, but you know, I think maybe Dr. Dorsey and I, during our May legislative committee meetings, we can discern whether or not this is a concern with other school systems, and whether or not we can lobby the state to maybe change or offer a change where we can, you know, because our media clerks are valuable, especially at the high school level and, you know, all levels really. But with the devices and it's just it just unsettles me that we have 0 for media aid. And again, I know that's not your choice, but that's driven by APA.
Yeah, I'd like to come back to that. I want to respond to the planning time thing, and then one comment on media clerks, but then we'll talk about that more in 2 slides. On planning time, that is a reflection of our percentages now. And there were some discussions about possible changes to that, because if you're willing to make changes there, in the grander scheme of the formulas in the spreadsheet that you can't see here tonight, that things can get better or worse. That's a place where we kind of pushed a little bit to say we don't want to move in a different direction. If the goal is 40 and we're halfway there, we don't want to be setting ourselves back. And they have been collaborative and they have been responsible, and so those percentages ended up set where we actually function. On media clerks, I want to make sure I was clear earlier. They're recommending 0 in the base. Dr. McCabe's making a superintendent's decision to, in practice, make that 0.5 in the base. So we are going to have a 0.5 allocation in the base. That does require a change at one level, though, which I'll get to in a second. Okay, so what about implementation? Here's kind of the next steps. This is going to be a 2-year process, but here's kind of the next steps. Where we are right now is taking this methodology, more or less now in complete agreement with APA, and we're fine-tuning it for the current data, the most recent staffing data. What are the costs this year for each and every employee? Because again, this is, you know, we've always budgeted with averages. We've always staffed schools based on average employee cost. This isn't that anymore. This is the exact cost of each and every employee in each and every school. So we're applying the methodology and running the model on the current data. That's ongoing. All of these things are ongoing at the same time. We're defining those business rules with APA, which will be permanently kept in a coding book. We don't seem to have any disagreements over that. I think that's almost done. We do have to define different than like unique business rules for multilingual learners and special ed, different than who falls into each of those rows in the base model. Because how we have handled ESOL or ML over the years, like where you see 0 on that chart from the waiver here, 37 schools at 0. Obviously, we were teaching ESOL students. I mean, clearly we were. But what we've done historically is the amount of ESOL teachers we have had, or ML teachers we have housed and charged centrally, and for a very good reason, I would say. We did that because we have a small but dynamic and growing population of ML students, and by taking that approach, that allowed our supervisory staff and our school-based administrations to have a lot more flexibility throughout the year. Blueprint's more about, like the theory of Blueprint is more about setting FTE at the school level, getting the exact cost of who occupies those FTE and doing the math. It doesn't really allow for keeping a cadre of employees centrally based so that you can send them out to each school throughout the year as needs change. And so to us, we don't want to lose the ability to better serve kids. Like, we feel like we've been able to reach all of the students as best we could through how we've done it, but that way doesn't work with Blueprint. And so we're working with APA, and they tell me that they're close to some business rules for how we may be able to kind of meet our goal of having the flexibility to say, Nick, we're going to start you out at Piney Ridge, and that's where you're going to be for a while as an ESOL teacher. But, oh, Linton Springs has had a few students move in, so we want to split some of your time there now, Nick. That's what we've been doing. We want to figure out how can we still meet that kind of approach through Blueprint. So that's what rules for ML means. For special ed, the rules still in question are more about the concept that Blueprint, the law recognizes that all school systems in Maryland spend more money in special ed than the Blueprint shares require. And no one's arguing that we should spend less in special ed or anything like that. But when you do the math, every school system in Maryland spends significantly more millions of dollars on special ed services than the Blueprint funding shares say we must spend. And so Blueprint allows in that case that when that occurs, and that occurs 24 districts in Maryland, you are then able to take money from the other programs, Comp Ed and ML specifically, and use those funds to pay for the amount of money above the required shares in special ed that you're spending. So that's easy to say, but what are the rules to do that? Is it as simple as we can make that change at the central level, at the system level, or do we have to look school by school to determine an amount of money in each school that we're going to charge from, let's say, Comp Ed to the special ed charges above shares? And if it's going to be school by school, what are the rules to make that determination of how much money and how it gets spent? So that's what those two things mean. We're gonna have to make some changes in the year coming. That work's already started, and we're going to go over those on the next slide. And then that last bullet, which we'll come back to briefly at the end, that's sort of the last step of this in fiscal 28. So 2 years from now to make all of this whole and get us fully compliant. So what are we doing for next year? We're going to be making some changes to some very specific positions, and the reason for that is to be able to put that base model in place and weigh those decisions like the one Mr. Whistler just raised and come up with what's going to be our base, and then we have to work from there with the goal of preserving class size. So these are the position changes for next year. So this is where I want to say, overall, I think this is a good story for Carroll County and the impact on our system as a whole. If you're one of these folks, you don't necessarily feel that way today, because they spent this morning meeting with people like me and Nick and others to share this news. That's actually the second year that they had such a meeting, because before the waiver was granted, we had to begin to move forward. So twice in a year, we brought folks in to share with them that something different is going to happen to their position next year. In some ways it's extreme, and in other ways it's maybe a little less impactful, but still impactful. And all I can say is our people have endured that. They've stayed with us. They've come here to hear that message, and they've been nothing but professional. And sure, this is about them, and they have questions and concerns about what impacts them, and they should. But even then, a lot of the conversation is also about the students and the service to students and how will that be met. And, if I feel it's a shame, I don't like what's happening to me, but I also have concerns about what this is going to mean for service delivery. And I just want to say that before we get into the changes here. So meetings were held to give these employees, to dignify them, to give them the courtesy of hearing it before it became a public presentation tonight. But these are the changes being enacted, and they're already underway from a staffing standpoint for next year. So we will eliminate a position we have centrally called the mentor teacher for counseling, and we have to make some choices because, Nick always says this at our meetings, we didn't create positions that we didn't think we didn't need. And people were fulfilling important service in those positions, so we have to figure out how to make adjustments for that. But as part of making the transition to the base model, we're going to eliminate that one role, And then all of these positions here will be reallocated. These aren't budget reductions like we might talk about later tonight. These are reallocation of resources to help us implement that base model in a way that can preserve class sizes or course offerings to the maximum extent. So none of these folks should be without employment next year with Carroll County Public Schools. And if they're in a 1.0 position right now, even if that position isn't going to exist anymore, such as with the first one, they will still have a full-time 1.0 position somewhere in Carroll County Schools in an area that matches with their certification or licensure or background, et cetera. So that's a change. We have had for many years an academic facilitator at every high school. I don't want to diminish all of the many things they do, but one of the most significant things is they are the test coordinators at every high school. Those roles will be eliminated with the next year, and there'll be a reallocation. So those first two are just, your position isn't going to exist next year. The third bullet, Mr. Whistler, that gets back to your point, the superintendent has sort of made her decision that we can't live without media clerks, but we're going to standardize at 0.5 at every level. And so that change affects the high schools most directly. The elementary and middle schools have a 0.5 in place already. It won't require a change there. It does require a change at the high school levels. Those 7 folks will still, our view, the way Ernesto Diaz views the world, they still shall have a 1.0 position in Carroll County Public Schools. It may be 0.5 media clerk and 0.5 something else. There may be a different role that they can slot into. There's some flexibility to work through this over time as the staffing year unfolds into the spring. If you go back to the model for the line called interventionists, I think those roles would tend to be what we would call reading and math specialists or reading specialists and math resource teachers. And so you can look at the base, and the base is lower than the actual folks we have in every school. And so we had a meeting today with the elementary and middle school math specialists, and in a way, while their position's not in any way being eliminated like some of the ones above, this was a more challenging meeting in the sense that we don't have the level of school by school detail we need just yet to know which schools might be impacted by this. But the net effect of this change would be, or may be, that with the exception of, I think, 4 elementary schools, all of the other schools have a 1.0 math resource teacher or math specialist. Depending on the school-by-school data, we may have to have a few more schools that have a 0.5 math resource teacher or math specialist, like the 4 elementary schools that do right now. We just have got to get a little bit further down the road with APA to know which schools those might be. And, you know, Nick and I talked with Cindy, Dr. McCabe, for a while about this is going to be a little bit confusing because we're bringing you in to tell you that a change could be coming, but we can't tell you exactly what that change would be. We felt like at the end of the day, they needed to have that conversation, even though we knew we'd have to follow up later. So that's one that's a little less clear at the moment. And then separate from the work of APA, with APA, separate from resource allocation, there are 2 other changes that are occurring in a different way under Blueprint that require a change in FY27 as well. And so we brought those employees in today to work with them. The first is we just talked about college and career ready and that sort of thing. At the middle school level, there's a part of Blueprint, a carve out of Blueprint that requires each local Board of Ed to have a partnership with their local workforce development board. And the goal of that partnership is to focus on providing career development opportunities to middle school students starting in grade 6. And the way it works is there's a sort of a per pupil amount for students that is carved off, and that money goes to the local workforce development board, and every Board of Ed has to develop a memorandum of understanding with their workforce development board on how that program's going to work. Where our MOU landed with Carroll Workforce Development was that some of the money would go directly to Carroll Workforce for their staffing needs and their other program needs, and some of the money would sort of stay in CCPS because we would create 8 middle school career coaches, a similar role to what it has long existed at the high school level. And then that MOU also defines amounts of money that are going to be retained here for those positions versus going to workforce development. As things have progressed over the couple of years that this has been in place, we reached a point where the amount of money that needs to be here versus there or there versus here under the MOU was no longer aligned with the costs of all the programs. And so we need to make a change to the middle school career coach. It's been an 11-month teaching position. We need to reduce that to a 10-month teaching position with actually 10 extra summer days. That actually does align it with the high school career coach role and some other roles we have in the system. But in order to balance that MOU requirement out, that's the approach we're taking. And then lastly, and this last one will show up in the superintendent's budget update as well tonight. There's been a program from the onset of Blueprint called TSI, or Transitional Supplemental Instruction. It's geared at early literacy interventions, tutoring at the primary levels. That program was funded by design under the Blueprint law for the early years of Blueprint with an eventual phase out. That phase out happens to be fiscal 27. And so the amount of money we've been receiving for the TSI funding that's been spent on a group of employees called elementary primary interventionists goes away next year. And so we can't sustain those FTE as a result of that change under Blueprint. Those two things don't have so much to do at all with the APA work. And then 28, you want to stop there, Mr. Whistler, with a question?
I just have a request, and I really want to stress this for the audience. When you see the word eliminate, the connotation is cut. You're gone. I don't know, unless there's any objection by my colleagues or staff, I'd rather we change that word to repurpose. Because I don't want the public to think that we're eliminating positions, because that's not what we're doing here. These people in these positions, as Mr. O'Neill has mentioned, they're not being fired or let go. They're just being repurposed, and that is driven by Blueprint. So I know, Dr. McCabe, if you're amenable to that, I just don't want folks thinking that this means cut. That's just the concern that I have personally.
We could put repurpose mentor teacher FTE.
We can work on that change.
Yeah.
I think for the employees it really mattered. We did have that opportunity to meet with them today. But I appreciate you drawing underlining that point. These are not budget reductions. What we're seeing here, except for the last one, which is specific to a Blueprint stream, they're not reductions from the budget like we may talk about later with budget. They're reallocation of resources. They're going to be moved differently to different schools and used in different ways. And that's part of Blueprint too. And so then that leaves us with the balance. How do we get from 50% to 100% compliant? That work will happen in fiscal 28, and we will be back to the conversation, but at a much less poorly impactful degree of some movement of teaching positions among the schools. We do not yet have that school-by-school analysis tightened up enough to be able to suggest where those changes might happen. And the last thing we want to do is design a chart and then have to backtrack from that yet one more time. When we're comfortable with APA, that we agree that that's where we are, we will share that publicly. The only thing I can promise you is we're not talking at all the kind of numbers we were talking about last year. But we do see some transitions. And some of those transitions will be similar in like the theme to last year, just not the volume. Some of that movement likely would be from schools that have lower compensatory education enrollments to maybe the next set of schools that have slightly higher compensatory ed enrollments. But we're also seeing, as we work through the data based on the methodology with them, that there probably will also be some movement the opposite way. So we made those decisions in fiscal 23 when the compensatory ed numbers rose quickly and state funding rose with it, to place that new state funding, and it was about $11 million of new state funding in very specific schools. We took our best educated approach to where the line might be for those schools. It ended up being 16 of our schools K-12. Now as looking at the data, it looks like probably with hindsight, maybe that money should have gone into 20 schools instead of 16. And so there'll be some softening that way. And I would say to you, on the whole, I believe that the school administrations of those schools who have been significantly resourced in recent years under Blueprint some movement from them to the next schools down is much easier to absorb or to deal with than the other end of the movement from the lowest comp ed schools to the next lowest comp ed schools. You want to add anything? I think with that, it's just any questions you have left.
Dr. Maldo.
Yeah, this is actually the previous slide, if you would. And again, I guess this is why eliminating isn't really the best term, repurposing. 3 ways in which you said they could be repurposed, from what I understand, or at least 2 out of 3. If they're a 1.0 FTE, then they could be repurposed to another 1.0 position. If they're a 0.5, then they can make that up with another 0.5 position. But the third aspect, is this possible that if they're a 0.5, like a media clerk, could they do 0.5 at one school and do 0.5 at another school?
It's not, excuse me, it's not impossible. And there are scenarios where that exists. When I mentioned the 4 elementary schools who have a 0.5 math resource teacher, they do in some cases share that. It's that one person, 1.0 person, working at 2 different schools. The factors that come into play for making those kind of decisions, Dr. Malvo, might be things like, where are the 2 schools geographically located within the county? Is it feasible for the employee to maybe work the morning in school A and still be able to get to school B for the afternoon portion of their FTE? There's other factors that we have to consider, but that's a third option that's in play here as well, yes.
Great. Thank you for making it as painless as possible, with these adjustments.
Well, I mean, it's painful for these folks. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but we're going to try to do our best to work through this.
Dr. Dorsey.
Thanks for meeting with the staff members who are affected by this. And, I am just very pleased to hear that everyone really treated the whole situation very professionally. And certainly from our folks, we don't expect anything less, but kudos to them. And again, thank you for taking the time to walk them through where we are. I have a question. When you were going over the implementation steps, when you were talking about the business rules that will have to be determined, I just wondered, will there be any flexibility once you've established these business rules, or once you establish them, will that be what you have to stay with from here on out?
You're asking the questions we've been asking, even though we spent a year or the better part of a year with them. Sort of our biggest question that's similar to that, Dr. Dorsey, has been, once we become compliant, once we make the shifts, we make the changes we have to make, can we revisit those rules to see if they still make sense? And I think the general feeling is yes, as long as it's appropriate and as long as you reset the standard from that day forward and don't deviate from that. When we eventually get audited, and we always get audited by the state, one component of that will be, are you honoring the business rules that you said that you would honor? But that's a question we have, a live question we have with them for APA. Is there an opportunity to, it's one thing to develop a theory, it's a different thing to go through the implementation and then see where you land. So all I can tell you is I think so, and they've been nothing but receptive to feedback and to considering things differently. We can't change it willy-nilly. We can't change it each year to suit our needs. We can't change it from one school to the next. But overall, if we get to a place in time where we've been through the process, I think we could look at it again and see if something else makes better sense.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, and again, just a parting comment. I want to leap in and join what my colleague Ms. Zimmer said earlier. Thank God the tears are gone. And if I could bring everyone back to a year ago, we were talking about repurposing 88 positions at the beginning of this school year, and then another 92 positions at the beginning of the next school year. And so the work that you've done with APA to kind of wrap your head around this model and to look at how we can have more flexibility in how we spend our money and how we bill it to certain buckets, your efforts have really paid off in that we're really minimizing the hurt for so many of our employees. They deserve to know where they're working, whether they have to move schools or not, and because of your efforts, you've really minimized that impact for our staff and our school system employees. So thank you so much for doing that.
I'd say a lot of folks other than me deserve that praise, and I'll deflect it to them when appropriate. I'll let them know.
All right, thank you. The next item on our agenda, the much anticipated 250th celebration. Mr. Melhorn, we are waiting. We are so excited to hear what you have for our school system this year. Dr. McCabe.
So we discussed our semi-quincentennial celebration efforts a lot recently and promised a presentation to highlight our curriculum and the other programs that are occurring. Mr. Melhorn and Mr. Lesh, our secondary and elementary social studies supervisors respectively, along with Mr. Wernick, are here to share what we have planned.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Wernick, Director of Curriculum and Instruction. And again, I'd like to introduce Mr. Bruce Lesh, who is our Elementary Supervisor of Social Studies, and Mr. Ryan Melhorn, our Secondary Supervisor of Social Studies. And as it's been shared, we are excited just to provide information on how Carroll County Public Schools will contribute to the celebration of the America 250 celebrations already happening around, the states as well as Carroll County. As we begin this evening, any presentation or lesson begins with a clear objective. And so, again, we're sharing just an understanding and the purpose of the America 250 and the Maryland 250 initiatives to really highlight how in Carroll County Public Schools, the activities and events that we are going to contribute to really support the celebration. And so to kick it off, I'm actually going to have Mr. Lesh begin to share some information.
Good evening, Board and Dr. McCabe. Mr. Melhorn and I are grateful tonight to be able to talk about America 250. As I'm sure you're aware, our country's next birthday is a really significant one. 250 years ago, we declared independence from Britain, and on this July 4th, we're going to celebrate that semi-quincentennial anniversary. And that's the term that we have to get used to saying that I've been working on the last couple days. In preparation for this, really it goes back to 2016. The U.S. Congress in 2016 created a commission, the United States Semi-Quincentennial Commission, that set up the infrastructure for this year's celebration. The committee was a nonpartisan effort, and they sort of had three goals. One was to educate and engage the public about the Declaration of Independence and the founding of our country, to inspire service and events related to the United States, and then to make sure that we recognize the contributions of all Americans as we move towards an independent nation. Popular culture-wise, you may have noticed the last couple weeks, if you watch the NFL, you'll see that America 250 is on the sidelines now, and so it's starting to become more and more prevalent publicly. Subsequent to the United States Congress creating the commission, each state created their own version of America 250. And so in 2023, the Maryland General Assembly created the Maryland 250 Commission. They've been engaging stakeholders around the state about how to go about and celebrate this particular anniversary. They're also focused on service, promoting engagement, civic engagement for students and adults, and to also focus on those contributions. And Maryland 250 has been working closely with a local group, which is the Carroll 250, that Ryan's going to talk about.
Thank you. Good evening, board members, Dr. McCabe. So we really started this planning on a county level back in 2023 with Celebrating America, which is a history consortium here in the county that was started by Commissioner Howard some years ago, where we were having those conversations knowing the celebration was coming up. So I co-chair that with Joe Thompson, who's the Director of Public Services for the Carroll County Public Library. And working with Jason Alari, the Executive Director at the Historical Society, we decided we need to reach out to the commissioners, kind of get the ball rolling on that because it's going to be here quick. So in June of 2024, we were able to get a resolution passed by the county commissioners to establish a planning advisory committee, which is basically a subcommittee of Celebrating America that's made up of a variety of members, some of our folks in the county offices, different community organizations here in the county, as well as, again, myself as a liaison for the school system, and many of the members of our local historical sites and organizations. So we went with the theme Carroll Voices. We're really trying to highlight and celebrate Carroll County's history through a lot of the events that I'll highlight here coming up on the next slide. of what was Carroll County's role in the events leading up to the Declaration and beyond. The American Association for State and Local History put out a guidance document about 2 years ago with some themes, and one of them is ongoing revolutions, that it's not just the American Revolution, but the ongoing revolutions that have occurred throughout United States history. So we've really focused that. So when you look at some of the Carroll 250 events going on, it's not all revolutionary based. We've had some events on more modern topics, whether it's civil rights, women's rights, some other things that we've had. So of those events, we've had over 30 events scheduled since June of 2024. Our plan has been to hold at least one a month, and those have been held at our library system across the county at the different branches. Some of our local historical sites and museums. Carroll Arts Center has hosted some events, and we've had over 1,000 attendees at those. We do ask folks that want to attend those to RSVP through the Carroll County Public Library, and that just helps us track our attendance of those events as we go on. So majority of them are free. There have been some ticketed events. Those are typically the author events that Carroll County Public Library has. We've had a lot of authors with historical fiction as well as some historical nonfiction present with more to come. And again, those partnerships are with local historians that we have through our networks, some of the authors that the Carroll County Public Library is able to secure, cultural organizations such as Sons of the American Revolution, Daughters of the American Revolution playing a large role in that, as well as educational institutions. We have a presentation coming up at the end of the month with McDaniel College. And the whole idea really of that is to strengthen our community, bring our community together for this celebration. One of the things through a Maryland 250 grant, we were able to use some of that grant money to create a Carroll 250 traveling exhibit. You may see some posts going around the county. It was recently at the Farm Museum. I believe next it's going to the Carroll Arts Center. But what this exhibit is, it's a tavern. It's 10 by 10. It's pretty big because they've asked, well, can we put it in a school? I'm like, I would love to, but where? It'd be pretty big in a lobby. But it's basically a tavern because that was the center of the conversations back then. And then highlighted around the outside of this exhibit is different aspects of Carroll County's history to highlight Carroll's role and, again, those ongoing revolutions and different stories that have occurred. So those are some of the things we've been working on the County Carroll 250 level. Mr. Lush?
The other nice thing about America 250 and the opportunity is just to highlight the fact of where these concepts occur in our already existing curriculum. Our curriculum is aligned with the Maryland State Department of Education's standards and frameworks. And so we have an opportunity beginning in pre-K to introduce students to a lot of the concepts that will come out in this celebration. Kids look at community and community roles, what it means to be a responsible citizen, the roles that leaders play and different types of leaders in our society. Then they're introduced to the ideas of democracy. And then in grade 3 is when they first get introduced to the principles of the Declaration of Independence and how the Constitution structures American government. And that continues throughout the rest of their elementary social studies education. In grade 4, they dive deeply into the causes of the American Revolution, the Declaration of Independence, and then the American Revolution itself. And then grade 5 picks up with the Constitutional Convention, the powers, branches of the American government. They look at the Bill of Rights. They move through amendments up into the 20th century. And so a lot of the concepts that will be talked about within this celebration are already embedded through the elementary program, and as you'll see in a second, also in secondary.
And secondary level, again, we get a lot of complaints about ancient history, but there are connections in ancient history. So again, in looking at our units on Greece or Rome, we'll look at some of the basic ideals of Athenian democracy, Roman Republic, 7th grade, medieval Europe. They'll look at kind of the decline of feudalism, the introduction of English common law, the Magna Carta. Our U.S. history course, particularly within the American Revolution, forming a new government. 8th grade U.S. history is colonization through Reconstruction. And then at the high school level, 9th grade is typically when most of our students take American government and learn about the structure of the Constitution, the different branches, how all that operates, principles of democracy. 10th grade, we have U.S. history again, 1900 to present, where they're again kind of getting those ongoing revolutions, those changes of working on this democratic ideals that were founded. And then 11th grade, modern world history, looking back at some of those Enlightenment ideals that shaped some of the ideas of our founders of our nation. So with some of the things we have done already with it is in 2024, America 250 introduced the America's Field Trip Contest, which I was pretty jealous. If students get first place, they get a free trip to a national park. And the first year that this was instituted in 2024, we had 9 students from Carroll County receive either first or second to be recognized nationally, 3 of which came from Carroll County, which was really exciting. We had 2 first-place winners that got to go to the national parks, 1 student from Liberty High School, 1 from South Carroll, and then we had a second-place finisher from Mount Airy Middle School. And for that, students can either enter an essay based on the theme of what America means to me or create a piece of artwork, and we've had students do both. We've had some local history professional learning that I've designed and coordinated with Mr. Lesh as well for our PK to 12 social studies teachers, where we spent a week in June touring the local historical sites. And I know Ms. Zimmer was able to attend a couple of those this summer to tour those historical sites. And again, the part of that is to get our teachers more knowledgeable of local history, because there's a lot of research out there that shows if you can bring that in, it makes it more relevant for students. They're able to make those connections at that local level to understand the bigger picture. So that was something we have worked on. We've had our own communications office share out Carroll 250 events through our system-wide emails. We had a presentation at our Supervisor Day for Secondary Social Studies this year by Tammy Ray, who's through the Babylon Vault Company for the Vietnam Memorial Wall that came to New Windsor this October. She came to present to our teachers on the importance of what that event meant and to offer field trip opportunities. And we did have 2 teachers at Westminster High School take their classes there to tour the wall that Friday morning that was kind of designated as that field trip time. We have also shared the Civic Star Challenge with our teachers. That is through the 2 nonprofits known as iCivics and the Bill of Rights Institute. And what that challenge is, encourages teachers to teach the ideals of our nation, whether it's lessons on the Declaration of Independence or the U.S. Constitution. Then teachers can submit their lessons for a chance at awards and different programs, free curricular resources, those types of things. And then we have Carroll County History Day, something we have every year. This year it's February 28th from 9 to 1 o'clock, where our students do their History Day projects. But as part of that, we also have a History Expo that has a lot of our local history organizations there exhibiting as well as an event. And then we'll have a special keynote address from someone from Maryland 250 there this year as well. So moving forward, some of our additional plans we are working on. I'm working on with Mr. Flaherty and his team to create a video of students and staff reading excerpts of the Declaration of Independence. If you remember, it was probably prior to Super Bowl back 2013 or 14, they had some of the NFL players, current and retired, do something similar. And I thought, as we were planning with this, we thought that would be really neat to put something like that together that's permanently we have on our YouTube channel of our students as a recognition for this event.
In addition to the video, we're in the process of working with teachers to develop grade level specific lessons on the Declaration of Independence that'll be delivered during the week of June 1st, and that'll be pre-K through 5 at the elementary level and then also at the secondary level. And then we're also going to be in the spring authoring and sharing with schools sort of trivia or fun facts about the Declaration of Independence and the American Revolution that'll be read during the morning announcements to sort of build up a little excitement as we move towards celebrating that the Declaration of Independence with that lesson in that first week of June.
And the next thing there, one of the things at Maryland 250 in general is the civic engagement piece. So one of the ideas we also have is to work with the Carroll County Board of Elections to reach out to them to see if during lunches we could do voter registration for those students that would qualify at the high school level. And then again, we'll continue to work and provide ideas for additional school-based strategies to our schools.
Wonderful. Ms. Zimmer.
Just a comment. I'm so grateful, Mr. Melhorn, Mr. Lesh, and obviously Mr. Warnick. Obviously, this has been years in the making. And Mr. Melhorn, you and I had a conversation at the Historical Society back in June of 24, and I was just thrilled to hear how much was already in the works and the way that you have integrated with Carroll 250 to represent our school system. So I just want to thank you for all the hard work.
Ms. Battaglia.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo it. Thank you guys so much for all the work that you have done. This is an incredible thing that our school system is doing. And, you know, not just being a lifelong resident of Carroll County, but just as an American, I mean, we have a lot to be proud of and how far our country has come. And I do thank you guys for everything you're doing between, you know, what our students are learning and everything that we're doing going forward to have this celebration. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I will.
Dr. Malva?
Just, and there's a lot of wonderful things with this, especially also, I like the idea that diverse peoples and groups, you're going to showcase that as well. Did you guys give a website or a link where we could look all this up and
Yes,
just to make sure the public has that?
absolutely. So if you go to the Historical Society, hsccmd.org, and click on the event link, it'll have not only their events, but all the events tagged Carol 250 are on there. And there's quite a few coming up in the next few weeks.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Dr. Dorsey?
Yes, just thank you very much. Again, a lot of excitement concerning all of this. And again, I just, again, appreciate how, again, you're tying into, again, contributions from various groups, from all groups, and then again, playing up the service part of it as well. I think it's all very important, and again, it's pretty exciting. And I, again, remembered I was, I guess, at the Robert Moton Center when the teachers came who were interested in taking a look at that. But that whole concept, too, of, having different sites available for our teachers to visit and learn about. And I don't think anyone chose Moton as a project, but again, they certainly had that opportunity. And again, it was a lot of excitement. They were really impressed to hear some of the things that were happening in the various places in our county. So you've pulled it all together, and again, it's not that it's going to be any kind of special add-ons in a sense, because again, so much of it is already in the curriculum anyway. So thank you for sharing the information with us tonight.
Our staff has also been working together to create a proclamation that summarizes all of the things that we have planned for this wonderful celebration. Mr. Shockney, could you share what we have?
Sure, I can, if you'd bear with me. All right, so I'll begin. Whereas Carroll County Public Schools proudly recognize the commemoration of America's semi-quincentennial, I've been working on that as well, marking 250 years since the signing of the Declaration of Independence and the founding of the United States, and whereas the historic milestone provides a meaningful opportunity to reflect on our nation's achievements and its enduring commitment to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and whereas as part of this national observance, Carroll County Public Schools is dedicated to honoring the legacy of democracy that has shaped our past and continues to guide our future. Through semi-quincentennial activities, students will deepen their understanding of America's past and be inspired to embrace active citizenship. And whereas schools will implement age-appropriate lesson plans and activities designed to strengthen historical and civic learning, social studies teachers will lead classroom discussions and activities focused on our country's founding principles, the Constitution, and the ongoing work of democracy. And whereas Carroll County Public Schools will encourage student-led projects and community service initiatives that reflect key semi-quincentennial themes, democracy, equality, justice, and civic responsibility as part of History Day and school events and activities. And whereas Carroll County Public Schools will continue to collaborate with the Carroll County Historical Society, the Carroll County Celebrating America History Consortium, Carroll County government, and local civic organizations to support the commemorative experiences with field trips, assemblies, and projects that celebrate both national and local history. And be it therefore resolved that Carroll County Public Schools remain steadfast in its commitment to fostering historical awareness and civic responsibility, ensuring that the principles upon which our nation was founded continue to guide and inspire future generations. And be it further resolved that this proclamation be inscribed upon the minutes of the Board of Education of Carroll County on the 14th day of January in the year 2026.
Thank you very much. And again, Mr. Melhor, Mr. Lesh, everything that you've prescribed, that you've been working on for years, it just aligns so well to the America 250 effort, which started back during the last administration and is currently put out by this administration. So thanks a lot. Our students are going to learn a lot, and we have so much patriotism in this county, and we're going to be able to show it full force over the next year. So thank you so much.
And we'd also like to thank you for the proclamation.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you so much.
All right. And with that, any other questions or comments? All right, moving on to our next agenda item. Under reports, we'll have our school construction report. Dr. McCabe.
This is our standard monthly construction report, and Mr. Prokop is available for any questions or discussion.
No items? All right. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Malvo, yes.
Yeah, let's see. Related on the pre-K additions, current projections assume the increase of 850 students by the year 2029. Those projections, though, those are not the most recent or accurate, right?
Yes, the narrative here reflects the narratives from the facilities master plan and the capital plan from, well, that would be fiscal year 24, I believe, where the feasibility study was that's when we requested the funds. So that's the write-up, that's the data, reflects the data that was used to make the recommendation to move forward with those projects. So we wouldn't, changing that, we wouldn't want to change that because the board-approved documents at that time included this data and that information, so we wouldn't want to try to use this report to make any changes. It reflects what the data was at the time of approval.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. And now we will move to the public comment portion, public participation portion of our agenda this evening. Dr. Dorsey.
Public participation. To have an orderly presentation of comments by the public, the following guidelines apply. First, speakers with a connection to CCPS will be allowed to address the board for the allotted 3 minutes. Only those speakers that have registered online and have been notified by the communications department will be permitted to speak. Priority will be given to those citizens that are addressing the board about an item on the current agenda. Citizens not appearing in person for public comment can write to the board through email or U.S. mail. Secondly, public participation is not intended to be a question and answer session. However, if citizens have specific questions, the superintendent will assign a staff member to make contact during the board meeting to arrange a time to respond to questions. Third, the superintendent board reserve the right to correct misinformation presented as factual after the conclusion of the public participation period. Fourth, statements to the board should relate to a recent agenda item, an agenda item that is expected to appear in the future, or a matter of general policy over which the board has authority. Personnel matters, pending appeals, the actions or statements of individual staff, or items related to employee negotiations are not appropriate topics and may not be discussed. Fifth, the board has scheduled time on the agenda for public participation at approximately 5:15 p.m. The board reserves the right to limit the number of speakers on a particular topic so that all topics may be addressed. Additionally, the board retains the discretion to allow additional speakers as it deems appropriate. The board is allowing no more than an hour for public participation. Sixth, comments are limited to 3 minutes or less. All comments should be directed to the board members at the dais. Citizens may only address the board with their individual comments. Citizens may not stand in for another person or group and read their comments. When the allotted time expires, the speaker is permitted to complete a sentence. Citizens may leave any handouts for board members on the table at the back of the boardroom. Please do not approach the dais. Additionally, the public may not display signs or posters during the board meeting. In lieu of signs, or if you are unable to complete your comments in the allotted time, individuals are encouraged to submit remarks to the board in writing. And finally, number 7, those seated in the audience are asked to be respectful of the speaker and refrain from commenting to the speaker or to the board members. So with that in mind, we do have 15 speakers for the evening. Our first speaker is Joe Tier, citizen. And again, if I mispronounce your name, you can certainly correct me. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. My name is Joe Tier, and I've lived in Carroll County for 41 years and raised all of my children and grandchildren here. And I'm here today to state my support for the revised JIHA policy that was discussed at the December 10th meeting. Last month, all kinds of long-shot fairy tale scenarios were proposed in which ICE yanks students out of class, people buy uniforms on Amazon to impersonate ICE. Also, the term feel fearful was repeated several times. My takeaway from watching that meeting was, what if? What if? Also in that meeting, Sheriff DeWeese articulated the following, that there are SROs in all of the middle schools and high schools, and they're minutes away from the elementary schools. Federal agencies always communicate with his office, with local and law enforcement, and now I believe the policy was amended to that they will have to come to this office first before going to a school. And then finally, the key word of exigency or exigent circumstances was talked about, and Sheriff DeWeese talked about the fact that he didn't know of any instances of that happening. And the policy also states that federal agents have to give their name, their badge number, their agency, the purpose of their visit, and proposed action. So I spent part of my morning today trying to find instances of federal agents going to public school property, and I couldn't find any. To me, opposing this policy is to make a statement that you don't really trust your Carroll County Sheriff's Department. And so my what if to you is this. What if the collaboration of the Carroll County Sheriff Department with outside agencies results in preventing the next Rachel Morin or Laken Riley? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Diana Bergman.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Diana Bergman, and I'm providing testimony as a mother of 2 students and a community stakeholder of Carroll County Public Schools. Earlier this morning, I attended the 449th opening day of the Maryland General Assembly in Annapolis. I stood in solidarity with CASA legislative agenda to end 287G agreements and end the state and local collaboration with ICE and expand the data privacy protection. As a mother, I'm in opposition of the proposed policy JIHA, immigration enforcement, especially after the tragic death of Renee Nicole Good. Here are some main points I would like to highlight. 1, I'm demanding a non-consent to any immigration enforcement at schools. 2, I'm demanding that CCPS will not collect or share immigration status of students or families. 3, I'm demanding remove all reference to exigent circumstances in the policy. 4, implement secure protocol when ICE agents are known to be within a certain perimeter of schools. And 5, implement lockdown protocols if ICE agents attempt to access any of our schoolhouses. They have no business coming into any of our schoolhouses. We lost a mother. Everybody saw what happened. She was shot in the face. Regarding the elimination of specific roles and responsibility of those services for students, services for students that are being eliminated, those roles and responsibilities that support educators are being eliminated. This is regarding the budget. Those roles are being eliminated, and they're being asked, those supports and services are no longer going to be available for students, and they're being allocated to perform a different task in hand. But the current tasks that they're doing in the high schools are supporting our educators and supporting our students. And right here, we're talked about, we've seen our educators come out in Carroll County, and we can't even properly support them financially when everything is getting so expensive. And we all see that. Other recommendations regarding the capital budget proposal for Liberty High School. Look, it takes 15 years in Maryland to build a new high school. That's the current average rate now. And this school board has a responsibility to keep its promises to Liberty High School and put forward allocated funds for a feasibility study so it could start the process so that school could be replaced, because it's outdated. It doesn't work with the way we educate children today. So that's what I got to say. I'm running out of time, but I said what I said. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Natalie Sanchez.
Hello, I'm here as a parent of a Liberty High School student and a representative of Carroll County Immigrant Rights Collective. At last month's Board of Education meeting, Sheriff Deweese said he was insulted that anyone would say his office has anything other than student safety in mind. In December, Delegate Chris Tomlinson posted on his official Facebook page that Carroll residents need to relax about ICE. In response, I say to Sheriff Deweese, I am insulted that you think community members are not paying attention to the fact that in March you signed an agreement to collaborate with the racist, terrorist, murderous paramilitary organization known as ICE, which is currently operationalizing an ethnic cleansing mission across the nation and right in our community. To Chris Tomlinson, I say, we will not relax while members of our community are being abducted by ICE on the streets of Carroll County, and while our sheriff is assisting ICE to racially profile and disappear people with no due process through the detention center. In this political climate, where our politicians who are supposed to represent us are putting community members at risk and actively causing them harm, it is more important than ever for the Board of Education to stand up for the safety of all students. At the December Board of Education meeting, members of the board said they would do just this, but the new policy comes nowhere near communicating care and prioritizing safety. The policy made one positive change, designating schools as private spaces, but it also designated a sheriff who collaborates with ICE as the decider on whether or not ICE enters a school. I wish we could trust our sheriff, but due to his decisions to collaborate with ICE, we cannot. This is what we want from the Board of Ed immigration enforcement policy: a clear and direct statement of non-consent to any immigration enforcement on school property, a clear and direct statement saying that CCPS will not collect or share students' or family members' immigration status, removal of all references to exigent circumstances as a reason why ICE would be allowed on school property, a security plan that would implement a secure protocol if ICE agents are known to be near a school, and a lockdown protocol if ICE attempts to gain access to a school. One more thing, I support both proper funding for schools and a care-centered ICE policy. These fights for proper funding and care-centered safety and belonging are deeply connected, as they are both central to the well-being and education of students, faculty, and staff, which should be the top priorities for our Board of Education. We demand that the board rewrite the immigration enforcement policy to focus on these priorities rather than on compliance with ICE. Also, that proclamation that was read earlier means nothing if you don't use your power to defend all students' right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker, Thomas Vance.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Thomas Vance, and I'm in 6th grade. I'm a 6th grader at Shiloh Middle School. I'm here to ask you to protect two things that make Carroll County Public Schools special: the outdoor school program and the elementary school chorus, band, and strings music programs. For over 45 years, outdoor school at Hoshawa has been a part of our county. Its mission is to empower us to apply our knowledge to the real world, and its vision is to see us as emerging adults who value natural systems. I saw this firsthand when I went this fall. I got to experience the owl prow, night hikes, and raptor program. I saw wildlife you wouldn't normally see elsewhere in the county and learned the history of our home from amazing teachers. For me and some of my friends, this is our first time ever camping. I want my younger brother to have the same opportunity. Plus, it allows us to get a jump in our service learning hours, which are graduation requirement. We shouldn't lose a program that was literally built for us. The teachers are so knowledgeable and taught us an extension of our science curriculum. All I've ever heard about outdoor school is that it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and something you'll never forget. Having the opportunity to attend outdoor school, I agree. Please find another way to fund the new charter school without taking away outdoor school. Outdoor school benefits every single Carroll County student in the 6th grade. The new charter school will focus on agriculture and the natural world, but only benefit a few students. Outdoor school focuses on the natural world too, and benefits all students in Carroll County who are in 6th grade. I'm also wanting you to keep funding for band, strings, and chorus programs for 4th and 5th graders. I was both in band and chorus at Sandymat Elementary School, and because of that, my middle school band experience and quality is better. Starting an instrument young is important because that is when our brains are most receptive. There's so much research about music being good for younger students. It helps with math through rhythm and fractions and science through acoustics. Studies even show that music students perform better on standardized tests. My little brother is excited to start the clarinet and chorus next year. And if you cut out these programs, my parents may give him private lessons, but other students in our county aren't as lucky. You're taking away performing arts from all the 4th and 5th graders to provide a charter school that focuses on the arts for a small group of students. That does not seem fair to me. My parents tell me to save money for the things I want. If our county wants a charter school, maybe we should save money for a few years instead. Or instead of taking away money from other programs to help fund a new school that only some would benefit from attending. Band, strings, and chorus in elementary school and outdoor school for 6th graders provides a place for success for students who might not want to play sports or don't do well in their contact classes. These programs turn us into well-rounded young adults. Please don't cut the experiences that define what it means to be a student in Carroll County. Please allow my little brother to have the same experiences that I had in school that have made a difference in my education. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Our next speaker, Donald Hone.
Good evening, Board. I speak tonight as a 38-year resident of Carroll County with grandchildren currently attending Carroll County Public Schools. My wife and I, along with so many other parents, grandparents, students, and staff, are deeply concerned, sickened, and disgusted with the immigration policy and actions of our federal government and its agencies. With that in mind, I urge you to revise the immigration safety policy. In keeping with HB 1222, the policy purpose is to ensure a physically and emotionally safe learning environment for all students and staff in the event of an ICE action at or near a school. I urge you to strike from the policy any references to exigent circumstances. The school system already has policies in place that outline protocols for dealing with exigent circumstances. As the ICE actions in Minneapolis have shown us, ICE does not simply respond to exigent circumstances, ICE creates exigent circumstances. They sow chaos, fear, and terror. Say no to it in our schools. Because of this truth, our policy must include language that clearly outlines the priority of the physical and emotional safety of all students and staff. The following must be included in the policy. We insist that ICE does not enter a school without a valid signed judicial warrant. We insist that all immigration officers not wear face coverings. Should I even have to say that? Should that even have to be said? We insist that all immigration enforcement officers wear a badge that is clearly visible and includes their name and agency. And again, should we even have to say that? And we insist that a soft lockdown procedure be put in place should ICE and immigration officers appear on school property. The procedure must include the immediate movement of students and staff from outside into safe spaces, into their classrooms. Students should be sent to their classrooms so that they do not witness immigration enforcement actions. These revisions are common sense. I repeat, they are common sense. They are intended to keep our children and our staff safe. Board, I urge you, do not make the mistake of believing that this might not happen here. ICE is empowered and emboldened to act in ways that endanger the people and the communities in which they operate. The hysteria is not coming from those like me who stand here and say, do something. The hysteria is coming from the ICE agents themselves. My grandchildren are 10 and 5 years old. They should not, they must not witness to the violence and thuggery of these monsters. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Elena Peak.
I'm Elena Peak, a 35-year veteran who just finished teaching my 7th graders the time-honored tale, A Christmas Carol. In fact, we just returned from a field trip to see the play when I attended our last board meeting, during which important items were discussed. You may recall one of them was a board member's blatant and highly partisan plagiarism, and another was the policy regarding immigration and customs enforcement agents in our schools. I hope you'll incorporate the corrections about which I emailed you, most notably removing logically contradictory statements in Section 4. Sorry, I'm an English teacher. I can't resist editing. Anyway, Dickens' tale about the ghost of Christmas present displays two hideous monsters named ignorance and want, and reminds Scrooge that these children belong to all of humankind. On the brow of ignorance is written doom. Even struggling students are able to use inferencing to realize that the author is admonishing society that without high-quality education, civilization disintegrates. I'm here as a parent and private citizen to remind you that the message of Victorian England applies directly to Carroll County today, and to urge our community to invest more heavily in fighting the doom of ignorance. The vast hiring pool from which we used to interview and employ qualified teachers has evaporated to a puddle, and the number of education undergraduates has decreased by 2/3 in only 10 years. Those we are able to hire soon leave for other counties because of abysmal pay and lack of teacher respect. Veteran teachers have little incentive to remain, as our salaries don't even keep up with inflation, and we still need second jobs to make ends meet. Like Marley's ghost, residents across the county groan in disappointment when you, who should be the loudest advocates for students, refuse to lobby our commissioners for a larger budget, or even to make citizens aware of what's at stake. For example, rather than emphasizing outdoor school or one-to-one computers as items on the chopping block, without even mentioning an inability to meet the teacher contract in public meetings, you ought to have asked for, even demanded, that concrete steps were taken to fund our agreement last spring. Instead, you remained quiet, then held us over a barrel, and all but forced teachers to accept working without our promised and long overdue pay raise. Well, I applaud Dr. Dorsey and Mrs. Zimmer for their advocacy then. Like the ominous ghost of Christmas yet to come, I point my finger at those of you who are more concerned about future campaigns than the positions you currently hold. While you're in this nonpartisan role, the purpose of which is to work for our school's best possible outcomes, stop worrying about how it might affect future votes if you advocate for an education-targeted tax increase and do the right thing. Insist that the commissioners allocate more county resources to education and pay educators a competitive salary. Support your students by encouraging educators as they fight against the doom of ignorance, and be the advocates for education for your county that you claim to be, and perhaps like Scrooge, you might yet sponge away the writing on Carroll County's tombstone.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marjorie Ramirez Quevedo, and I've probably mispronounced that, so you can certainly correct me as you come forward. Is Marjorie Quevedo here? If not, I'm going to move on to our next speaker on the list, Aaron Miller.
Good evening, Dr. McCabe, board members, and educators. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Aaron Miller, and I'm a president of children in Carroll County Public Schools. I'm here to speak in strong support of continuing both outdoor school and elementary band education, programs that are essential not only for academic growth, but for the personal development of our students. I have a 4th grader who absolutely loves playing the clarinet, Band has become one of the most meaningful parts of his school experience. Through elementary band, he's learning responsibility, showing up prepared, practicing regularly, and understanding that his efforts affect the entire group. He's learning focus, patience, and perseverance. He's learning how to work as part of a team, how to listen, and how to celebrate the success of others as much as his own. Studies show that music education enhances cognitive development, improves memory, strengthens literacy and math skills, and supports social emotional learning. But as a parent, what I see most is the confidence and pride he gains from mastering something challenging and contributing to a shared goal. That same fourth grader is eagerly counting down the days until outdoor school. He talks about it constantly, not just as a trip, but as an exciting, important experience. Outdoor school gives students experiences that classroom alone cannot. They explore science in nature, develop problem-solving skills, and gain independence by navigating new situations while away from home. It teaches resilience, teamwork, and leadership, skills that stay with children for life. It's where they discover they can overcome obstacles, support one another, and succeed in new challenges. I also have a first grader who is already dreaming about attending outdoor school. Even at 6 years old, she recognizes that it's special. Outdoor school builds curiosity, environmental awareness, and a sense of wonder about the world around us. It connects classroom lessons to real-life experiences. It encourages friendships, collaboration, and a sense of community that strengthens our schools. Both elementary band and outdoor school provide balance in a world increasingly focused on screens and standardized tests. They support mental health, creativity, engagement, and belonging. They give students a chance to move, create, explore, and discover passions they may carry for a lifetime and might not otherwise realize. I understand budgets are tight and decisions are difficult, but these programs are not optional extras. They're essential investments in the whole child. Years from now, students may not remember the test or worksheet that they did, but they'll remember their first concert and the joy of learning outside the classroom, the confidence that they gained from those new experiences. On behalf of my children and countless families across Carroll County, I respectfully urge you to continue supporting outdoor school and elementary band education. Thank you for your time, your service, and your commitment to our students.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Belinda Lawson.
I think we're all awake now. I want to briefly say that I support the ICE policy. We have some phenomenal SROs in this county, as well as amazing sheriff who works with federal partners. So to those who oppose this policy, my question is, do you want the police dealing with the predator, or do you want your neighbors to? In case you forgot, we live in Carroll County. And based on the amount of shots I hear from my neighbor's house on the weekends, I suggest you let your law enforcement work it out. You have spoken with law enforcement, your attorney. Please pass this policy and let's move forward to actual concerns within the school system. This is a board meeting, not a legislative session in Annapolis. If you want these kids to be on laptops all day, you need to make sure all the programs you've installed on there are working, especially home access. Students, parents, and teachers all rely on this application to keep up with work, input work, and to keep track of work. This was down for 2 weeks this quarter. Please work on improving your technology. Can we please stop blaming all of your made-up fears and problems on a charter school? We all know the unions are against charter schools. Give it a break. A charter school is not a problem. Almost every single one of my Black family members in Philadelphia has attended a charter school. This is the only way some kids are able to learn. Title IX was once again in question at the Supreme Court yesterday. They were asked not to define what sex is. How can anyone make a determination whether they are discriminated against if they can't even define what it is? Based on the arguments heard yesterday, I recommend you reconsider updating your student handbook and updating your gender policy. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Shannon Hinkhouse.
Good evening. My name is Shannon Hinkhouse, and I'm running for the Board of Education here in Carroll County. I feel compelled to comment on recent budget discussions. However, I normally do not prefer to weigh in on things before I have the full picture. I'm looking forward to getting more information tonight about the budget to help all of us in the community get a better understanding of the challenges we face this year. Here's what I do know. The list of options for budget savings was a very disturbing list. My gut tells me that each of you would do whatever you can to keep from cutting our music or sports programs. As parents yourselves, I also believe that each of you know that a 5-year-old cannot be expected to be productive in class at 3:30 in the afternoon, and that it is unreasonable to have them getting off the bus at 5 o'clock. I also do not believe that our county commissioners expect us to take drastic measures such as these to save money. As a taxpayer, I expect that every year we take a hard look at our budget to ensure there is no waste and no missed opportunity for cost savings. I think our commissioners have the same expectation of our school system, and I believe CCPS meets that expectation. However, we no longer have full autonomy over how our money is spent due to blueprint constraints. It is my hope that blueprint mandates will be relaxed soon, but as we are not there yet, we have to live in reality. Ideally, it would be my preference that we as a school system have local control to identify and implement our priorities to serve our students and families. I have been reviewing budgets from prior years and see that we have added around 180 FTEs in the past 5 years and $117 million in revenue, and yet it is still not enough. As a Maryland taxpayer, that is upsetting. I do think we need to make an effort to cut spending next year, and the best option for that is to get rid of the one-to-one devices in grades 3 through 8. This should happen even if the savings are minimal, because students must master the basics before technology becomes the default. Parents know this instinctively, and research increasingly supports it. If the devices are not heavily relied on in elementary and middle school right now, this should not cause any major disruptions. This does not mean that children will not have access to technology, but that it is used sporadically and intentionally. I am still considering my position regarding laptops in the high school because I think many people believe that with our present reliance on tech, we need to get kids going right away. I have a different perspective as someone who had very little technology use prior to college, and yet I have had no difficulty integrating tech into my career. As for the rest of the savings, please work to identify other options. I know that is a difficult request, but we cannot entertain implementing the bulk of the suggested cuts. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Jessica Hill.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jessica Hill. I'm a CCPS elementary teacher, and in my mind, more urgent and important than a raise for me and my colleagues would be community safety and care. And that's why I'm a member of the Carroll County Immigrant Rights Collective. I'm against the current ICE policy. I'm for a policy that puts students' safety and care above all. We hear weekly of immigration enforcement being reckless, lawless, and even downright cruel. I'm not overreacting. Just last week, I read, or this week, last week I read, on January 8th, 2026, it was printed, mprnews.org, in quote, Minneapolis Public Schools on Wednesday canceled classes district-wide for the remainder of the week due to safety concerns following the killing of a woman by an ICE agent. The district said it was acting out of an abundance of caution. So I am asking that we act out of an abundance of caution to do all we can, do all you can in your power to prevent any death that could possibly happen on campus. NPR continued, in quote, the move came after officials at Roosevelt High School said armed U.S. Border Patrol officers came on school property during dismissal Wednesday and began tackling people, handcuffed 2 staff members, and released chemical weapons on bystanders. End quote. On January 8th, 2026, last week, CBSNews.com reported, in quote, several students and teachers were leaving school as the incident unfolded. Morrow, who graduated from the school, added that the agents were hitting people after they were already on the ground and using some kind of chemical irritant, end quote. If this can happen in Minneapolis, it can happen here. Please act out of an abundance of caution. The policy should prohibit ICE from schools. They should be prohibited from school grounds and the buildings. Remove exigent circumstances, as Sheriff DeWeese said last month. It's not applicable to the school setting. Require us to go into secure when immigration enforcement come toward school grounds, and lock down if they try to force their way into our schools. Please act out of an abundance of caution and care. Please put community and safety above all. Put staff above all. Looking at the time, you have the power to prevent deaths and harm, especially on school grounds. And Dr. Dorsey, thank you for being on the BOE, and thank you for being an outstanding principal I will always remember. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Randy Linville.
Good evening. I'm Randy Linville, a proud parent of Liberty High graduates, and I'm here to talk about the ICE policy. I've given this gentleman some handouts that have my requested policy changes for y'all to consider. That enough for everybody up there. My favorite quote, one I learned while judging high school debate, is by John Stuart Mill. He who knows only his side of the case knows little of that. I start with that quote because it reminds us that the real leadership means hearing people out, even when we don't start on the same side of an issue. I'm here tonight in that spirit as someone who shares your commitment to strong schools, safe communities, and common sense decision making. Some local politicians have called me ignorant and hysterical for raising concerns about this policy. It's very disappointing that someone who's supposed to be representing me has made no effort to understand my perspective while putting plenty of effort into misrepresenting what my perspective is. I'm here because I care about our schools, our kids, our community, and I know all of you do too. Let me be clear. I don't believe that the current policy is pro-ICE, and I'm not asking for it to become an anti-ICE document. What I am asking is simple. Make it be a strong pro-student, pro-staff, pro-safety, and anti-trauma document. Use the same kind of strong, clear, protective messaging that the board has always shown when it comes to school safety. Whether the threat is external or internal, whether it's violence, bullying, or something else. I want to point out all safety plans are what-if plans. Right now, immigration enforcement is creating real fear in our community. People are afraid, and they shouldn't have to be. People that are citizens, people that are officially in the process of becoming citizens, are truly afraid. Even someone that looks like me should be able to have empathy and understanding of this fear, it's real and it's happening. As a parent that's gotten so much from Carroll County schools, how can I not want everybody else's kids to have the same safety and privileges and opportunities my kids had? I've submitted to you online my requests, and that you've heard some of them already here, for the considerations for you to make for changing the policy. You've got the handout for that. My request is that you look at these topics, discuss them here in this meeting, and have a vote and determine whether to put them into the policy or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Julie Walsh.
All right, hello, members of the Board of Education and Superintendent McCabe. My name is Julie Walsh. I am a mother to 5 children in 4 Carroll County Public Schools. I am a school volunteer and a PTO leader. I am an advocate for this public school community at both the county and state levels, and now I am a candidate for the Board of Education. I come to you today to express my hope that as you consider the budgetary challenges facing CCPS, you do everything in your power to ensure that the children of Carroll County receive the educational opportunities that the residents of Carroll County expect from their public schools. I respect the inclination of this and prior boards of education to ensure that CCPS is not wasteful with its resources. I share your desire to make prudent decisions that respect the trust that Carroll County voters and taxpayers place in their elected officials. But I think it is important to speak clearly here. A school system cannot be healthy and whole. It cannot adequately serve its children, families, and community if it is so starved of resources that it is forced to cut programs that for generations have been viewed as essential to the school experience. When I was growing up in public schools, and if you attended public schools, I assume when you were, we did not see our athletic programs eliminated. We did not lose access to elementary chorus, band, and orchestra programs. We did not have to get off elementary school buses after dark because our school systems didn't allocate enough buses to get us home at a reasonable time. And for 50 years, multiple generations of Carroll County students did not lose access to their beloved outdoor school. I know that you do not want to make any of these cuts. But if you do not request and receive more funding for the school system, I do not see how the cuts can be avoided if class sizes are to remain consistent with what they are now. If you do not request and receive more funding, all I can see on the horizon is larger classes, fewer teachers, fewer opportunities for students to thrive, and a school system that is materially worse off than when previous generations attended Carroll County Public Schools. I ask you to ask the Carroll County Commissioners to allocate the resources necessary to ensure that the students of today and tomorrow, my children and yours, receive the same benefits that we did at their ages. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Rachel Hall.
Good evening, and hello again to the board. My name is Rachel Hall, citizen of Westminster, Carroll County, and I'm here to follow up on the CCPS immigration enforcement policy. The situation has escalated since we last spoke. On January 7th in Minneapolis, Minnesota, an ICE agent shot and killed American citizen Renee Good while she was legally monitoring immigration enforcement activity in her neighborhood. Eyewitnesses say Good was confronted by these agents, given conflicting orders, and then in the chaos was shot multiple times as she tried to leave the scene. The next day, U.S. Border Patrol rushed into nearby Roosevelt High School during dismissal while pursuing an unrelated suspect. There, they began tackling people, fired chemical weapons into the crowd of students, and handcuffed 2 staff members. Needless to say, this is not an optimal learning environment. When we last discussed the CCPS policy, the Board of Education seemed receptive to our concerns, and Sheriff DeWeese had some good suggestions, and I appreciate this. However, I don't think the proposed policy changes go far enough to protect our students. I know Sheriff DeWeese promised to act as a gatekeeper between ICE and Carroll County schools, but given the chaotic way ICE has operated as of late, we can no longer assume ICE will act in good faith and ask for his permission first. We need to state in clear, unnegotiable terms that school is no place for immigration enforcement. We need to remove exigent circumstances from the policy as Sheriff DeWeese suggested in the last meeting, as I can't imagine a scenario where immigration enforcement is a life-threatening emergency. We need to ensure that CCPS will not collect or share the immigration status of students or their families. Lastly, we need a solid plan on what schools are to do in the event ICE is within a certain perimeter of school grounds and lockdown protocols if they enter the schools. And by the way, I find it interesting that an earlier speaker automatically associated immigrants with violent criminals for no apparent reason. Let's take action on this to protect our students and their families. We cannot afford to wait and see when it comes to our children's lives and sense of security. We need to act before ICE shows up at our schools, because ICE is acting now. Can Carroll County be a leader in ensuring our children are safe? Or are we just going to leave the policy as is and follow state guidance and just do as we're told? Let's choose leadership over compliance. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker, Lisa Masano.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Masano, and I have 3 children in CCPS. I attended the recent BOE budget work sessions, and as I thought about what to say tonight, I found myself reflecting on the past year. The collective anxiety was so great, it felt like everyone was holding their breath as we waited to see the outcome of the operating budget and blueprint implementation. I think it's safe to say nobody wants to go back to that feeling. Then I thought about all the things I have learned in the past year. First, I learned that our community places great value in education and has a great deal of attachment to our schools and the opportunities they provide. Whether it be athletics or drama, chorus or marching band, outdoor school, or that career and tech center, everyone has an attachment to our schools that helps define who they are and provides inspiration to what they will become. The community demonstrated their commitment by showing up to support our schools, writing emails, and reaching out to elected officials. Second, I learned how we got in this position of facing such drastic cuts that may impact those things that are near and dear to our school communities. Unfortunately, inflationary impacts, declining enrollment, and funding from the state adjusted for our county's relative wealth have all played a part in bringing us to this critical point. Third, I learned we have a choice. We always have a choice. We could decide what things are the least painful to cut, or we could decide to ask for what we need to keep our school system adequately funded and prevent further cuts. We could choose to take for granted our hardworking educators and staff, or we could choose to follow through with the salary increases they deserve. We are not asking for luxuries. We are just asking to not let our funding become so lean that it becomes inadequate. Lastly, and most importantly, I have learned that sometimes the impossible is possible if someone speaks up. So I am here as a resident, a community volunteer, a parent, a leader, and a new BOE candidate, asking for you to please request to the commissioners for more funding for our schools. Last year, when I gave public comments during budget season, I closed by saying, the question is not if Carroll County can afford it, the question is if Carroll County can afford not to. Revising that today, based on the lessons I have learned, I say, the question is not if Carroll County can afford it, the question is what will Carroll County choose? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and did Marjorie Morales Quevedo come in? If not, that will conclude our speakers for the evening.
Thank you, Dr. Dorsey. Is there anyone on the board that wants to offer a rebuttal to anything that was mentioned today during public comment?
No, I guess I'll just address whatever comes up to be the agenda point.
Okay. Well, I'd like to offer a rebuttal claimed as fact, which it's not, and I would like it offered into the record, and I'll send this to you to offer it into the record. This is the second meeting in a row that I have been alleged to have committed plagiarism, and that issue of plagiarism just is not true. The purpose of my rebuttal is to rebut the allegations that a resolution I offered in December related to America's 250 semi-quincentennial initiative constituted plagiarism. These allegations misunderstand both legislative norms and the long-established practice of policy developed within governing bodies. Legislative drafting is not academic authorship. Plagiarism standards apply to academic or creative works where originality is expected. Legislative resolutions, ordinances, and laws are functional governance tools. They are designed for clarity, consistency, and alignment with existing legal policy frameworks, not originality of phrasing. The use of model and shared language is standard practice. Legislative bodies at all levels routinely reuse, adapt, and refine language from existing resolutions and statutes. This includes Congress, state legislatures, county councils, and boards of education. Many organizations explicitly promote model legislation to ensure consistency across jurisdictions. America 250 is a national initiative. America's semi-quincentennial is a nationally recognized commemoration. Consistency in themes such as civic education, constitutional principles, and historic understanding is intentional and appropriate. Jurisdictions across this country are adopting similar resolutions that I introduced last month to align with this effort. In fact, one was introduced today that aligned with the America 250 initiative. No intellectual property violation occurred. Legislative language is part of the public domain. No proprietary or copyrighted academic work was presented as original authorship. No claim of unique authorship was asserted by me or implied. Precedent and evidence. Congress routinely introduces identical or substantially similar bills across sessions. State legislatures regularly adopt language used in other states, and school boards frequently adopt verbatim policy templates provided by state associations and legal counsel. This practice is considered best governance, not misconduct. So my response to these allegations: this accusation of plagiarism reflects a huge misunderstanding of how public policy is developed. The appropriate focus should remain on the substance of the resolution which I entered, enhancing civic education and honoring our nation's founding principles. Reusing established legislative language is it is responsible governance. The resolutions that I introduced aligns with the national efforts to educate students about America's history and civic foundations. The allegation of plagiarism is unfounded and is without merit, and it's very unfortunate that the press perpetuated this notion. Many of the activities offered by Mr. Lesh and Mr. Widener align very much so to the America 250 initiative that started with President Biden and is currently being pushed by President Trump. I don't think Mr. Lesh and Mr. Widener engaged in plagiarism with their activities. The resolution I introduced did not originate from a partisan site, as is alleged. It came from a board colleague in Florida after I attended a conference in Washington, D.C. The language in the resolution was not partisan whatsoever. In fact, much of the language was introduced in the resolution that we 5 board members signed earlier today. But instead, it originated with the America 250 project that started under President Biden and is currently being executed under the Trump administration. So again, I will offer that as my official rebuttal to the allegations of plagiarism. Thank you. Next on the agenda is employee groups comment. Miss Jordan, thank you.
Forget us like Ms. Taglia did there a couple times. Okay, and I did make my comments a little shorter because I knew this meeting was going to be long. But before I start my comments, something John O'Neill said, because they met with the people who were listed on that thing. They met with the educators today. I'm going to reiterate what John said. Every single group, once they got over that initial, what am I going to be doing, all of them asked about the students and about the services for the students. And that's just what we do. It's the nature of becoming an educator at any level. And I just want to, acknowledge those people. Some of them are in the room now. So they came in for a meeting today and they still came back here to participate in the Board of Ed meeting, which, takes a lot of strength and fortitude to do that. And they're going to go back to teaching tomorrow. So, good afternoon. I'm Celeste Jordan, President of the Carroll County Education Association. Today marks 501 days since the educators in the CCA bargaining unit have received a salary increase. Our schools do not succeed because of spreadsheets or data points. They succeed because of the people who show up every day, the students and the educators from the CCA, CASE, and A&S bargaining units, people who give their time, energy, and care to our students. They build relationships with students, support families, solve problems in real time, and hold our schools together in ways that do not always show up in data reports or charts hanging in a school hallway. When decisions are made without fully considering their impact on the people, both students and staff in our buildings, the consequences show up in our classrooms. They show up as burnout, vacancies, larger class sizes, and fewer supports for students. They show up when experienced educators leave and remaining staff are asked to do more with less. Please make decisions that honor that reality. Support the people doing the work by prioritizing stability, respect, and collaboration. When you invest in the people who show up every day, you strengthen not just your workforce, but the schools and the community that depend on them. After 501 days without a salary increase, educators have not stepped away from their commitment to this community. We ask this board to meet that commitment with decisions that strengthen and sustain our schools. Also, I'm just going to take a moment to introduce Sherry Main, who is here to fill in for Miss Cindy Porter for a case.
Good evening, Superintendent McCabe, the board members. My name is Sherry Main. I'm a security assistant at Century High School, and I'm here to represent our president of CASE, Cindy Porter, and the members of our bargaining unit to discuss the importance of professional learning days and to share how thoughtful collaboration and staff input have shaped meaningful days to learn and grow. Our upcoming CASE Professional Learning Day for assistants and paraprofessionals is coming up soon. It's January 26th. Professional learning days are far more than time away from our daily responsibilities. They're a crucial and critical investment in the education support professionals who serve our students in our schools every day. Expectations placed on staff continue to grow as education, safety requirements, technology, and student needs evolve. Our staff are asked to adapt quickly and perform at a high level, and that requires ongoing, relevant professional learning opportunities. We strongly believe that professional learning days should include sessions which reflect current challenges, best practices, and real situations staff are encountering in our positions every day. I want to take a moment to specifically recognize the work that has gone into this effort by Jamie Weaver here at Central Office and members of CASE who met several times to thoughtfully develop class offerings based directly on staff feedback collected from previous professional learning days. This is not done in isolation. Staff voices were heard, concerns and considerations were made, and suggestions were used to shape sessions that are relevant, practical, and responsive. This type of collaboration ensures that professional learning is purposeful and that staff feel valued and invested in the process. For the first time ever, a class was put together this summer for all 12-month employees or secretaries to attend, offering in the morning and afternoon to ensure that they all were able to attend this session. Working with our head of security, Curtis Pierce, we offered a course on safety and security for the first time. As our secretaries are our first line of defense, and we wanted them to feel prepared and knowledgeable for whatever may come their way. Our members want to learn. They want to grow and continue serving our school system with professionalism and pride. CASE President Sydney Porter has sent invitations to all of you to come join us January 26th and take the time to sit in on some of these professional learning sessions. We hope you will take this opportunity to see firsthand the training being provided and gain insight into the scope of work our educational support instructional staff navigate daily. Professional learning days, when thoughtfully planned and grounded in best practices and staff feedback, improve morale, strengthen effectiveness, and ultimately benefit students. Our members want to learn, they want to grow, and they want to continue to serve our school and our children with professionalism and pride. We ask that these days be protected, valued, and continue to be designed with intention. Thank you for your continued commitment to the education support professionals and students of Carroll County Public Schools through your support of these important learning opportunities. Thank you.
And that concludes public participation. I'll give a moment for folks to leave if they wish as we transitioned into action items. Thank you to our employees for attending today. Thank you. I think they had enough. They put in a long day and they deserve to go home. We ask so much of our educators. Working overtime is tough. As we move into the next section of our agenda, item 6A, may I have a motion for the approval of policy JIHA, immigration enforcement?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Battaglia. May I have a second? Second by Dr. Malvo. Dr. McCabe.
2 months ago, we brought for discussion a proposed policy JIHA, immigration enforcement. As a reminder, this policy is required by the General Assembly of Maryland with the passage of HB 1222 and based on policy guidance provided by the Attorney General of Maryland. To be very clear, we would not be bringing this policy had not the General Assembly of Maryland passed a law last session requiring the Attorney General to develop guidance and every local Board of Education to adopt a policy based on that guidance. There has been significant public feedback since the policy was first introduced, both written and spoken. Last month, Sheriff DeWeese spoke at our meeting. As a result of his remarks, additional revisions were made to the draft policy, and it was resubmitted in marked up format for additional public comment. It now returns tonight, again, for board consideration. With that, Mr. Burkhouse, would you like to say a few words about the legislation?
Yes, thank you, Dr. McCabe. I just wanted it to be clear that the statute, House Bill 1222, makes it clear that the board is required by law to adopt a policy, and that the policy has to be in compliance with the AG's guidance. Several issues were raised during the public comment. I guess first of all, I would address the issue of inclusion of exigent circumstances in the policy. Both House Bill 1222 and the guidance issued by the Attorney General both contemplate a situation where an immigration enforcement agent would assert that there was an exigent circumstance, and that may lead to them being permitted to access non-public areas. That's really not an issue that, as far as I can see in the law, that there's any discretion left to the board in terms of adopting a policy. Similarly, the AG's guidance as well as the statutory law contemplates permitting access to non-public areas for law enforcement agents that have a judicial warrant, a signed judicial warrant, not a civil warrant or an immigration warrant, but a signed judicial warrant. And I think that the board should understand that not complying with a judicial warrant hazards staff not only being charged with impeding a law enforcement officer in the performance of their duties, but also violating a court order, which is essentially what a warrant is. It's an order from a judge of competent jurisdiction to allow police access to either search, seize, or arrest an individual, seize property, or to obtain evidence. So I just wanted to be clear that the decision to adopt this policy was one that was made by the state legislature.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any discussion by colleagues? Anybody want to offer an amendment? Ms. Battaglia.
No, I just wanted to, again, I appreciate the clarifications. Again, we've been hearing a lot of things. A lot of misinformation. I've been reading a lot of misinformation, and even the rhetoric for our students to disrespect law enforcement, that irritates me even more. There's no need for it. And, even here tonight, there was public comment, people running for political office that are not even making correct statements and spreading false information. That doesn't help anything either. I wish people would have done their research and looked exactly where this came from. This wasn't us. The board didn't develop this, the law. It was in Annapolis. So if anybody wants to be upset, I suggest you go to Annapolis and you stand in front of the governor's house and have a hissy fit, as far as I'm concerned. But to constantly, with the rhetoric that the Board of Education is racist, that irritates me. So I'm glad that we're getting this done and over with tonight. It does become irritating when misinformation is constantly spread out there regarding what's going on. So.
Any other comments by colleagues? And again, I'll offer a couple of comments. One of our public speakers gave a terrific example of exigent situation where she mentioned in Minneapolis, folks were pursuing someone onto school property. And again, it's really unfortunate the way things are evolving there, but that's an example of an exigent situation. And one of the things, and I talked to a few legislators in Annapolis, and again, Ms. Battaglia is spot on. This is not originated by us at all. But one of the concerns by legislators in Annapolis were they didn't want folks that were not ideal or maybe, on the run. They didn't want them to see our schools and our government buildings as sanctuaries. And so that's the purpose of the exigent circumstances in the legislation that they crafted. And I just want folks to understand that. I've seen a tremendous amount of exceptional input and passionate discussion on the changes that should occur in this policy. But again, as our legal counsel has mentioned, as my colleague has mentioned, these are required by law. And I really urge everyone to take their excellent examples and excellent feedback and input to our legislators in Annapolis, because that is where we can see changes to this happen. So again, I really appreciate the comment and the perspective of both sides. It's very, very important to hear that. And believe me, I read every single email. I think my colleagues probably did too, not to speak for them, but every single comment. But just the amount of time and effort and passion that went into this. The goal is protecting our kids and our employees, and not putting our employees at risk, not putting our kids at risk, or expose any of them to trauma. So I understand where everyone's coming from, and it's a very, very noble cause on both sides of the argument. Any other comment? Yes, Ms.
Hang on one second. Audience members, it is very distracting when any of you, I don't want to hear point fingers, but when you're talking, it is very distracting to the rest of us up here, okay? You had public comment time.
Okay, unless there's any other debate, I will call the question. All those in favor of adopting 6A signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item on our agenda is the approval of award of bids. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Battaglia, second by Ms. Zimmer. Dr. McCabe.
While there are only 2 items on the award of bids this evening, they are significant items. And so we're going to do each separately this evening. The first is the contract for the Carroll Springs HVAC project. Our review of the bid packets on the project indicate that the results are $1,529,320 over the approved budget. For state funding, we have a plan in place with pending IAC approval in February. At the local level, it will require an additional $350,000 from the county. Our staff has begun working on that request with the county staff. While this can be resolved for this important project, the bid results highlight a concern we've had for over a year, that we are chasing inflation and the escalation in the construction market. We will be very interested in the results as we open our future bids. With that, discussion?
Colleagues, any questions? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next item on our agenda, item 6C, approval of school bus contracts.
Just a second.
Hold on, yep.
We have another award of bid.
Oh, okay, you want to do that separately?
Yeah.
Okay, so that motion was for the Carroll Springs one, right?
Yeah, that motion was for Carroll Springs,
Okay.
and this would be for the light pole.
Gotcha. May I have a motion to approve the bid of awards for the Sourcewell with Musco Sports Lighting LLC?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Dorsey,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Battaglia. Dr. McCabe.
So, as you know, we need a contract with Musco Lighting to replace the stadia lighting structures at South Carroll and Francis Scott Key High Schools. You'll recall that we began an independent detailed inspection of our stadia lighting structures in the fall with Liberty and Westminster. Those inspections resulted in the need to remove the old structures and have new ones installed. The independent inspections of the other 5 high schools have been completed, and unfortunately, 2 additional schools, South Carroll High School and Francis Scott Key High School, also need to have the old lighting structures removed. The major difference between now and then is that then we had capital money in our self-funded local infrastructure renewal project to fund those 2 schools. As you know, the project for those 2 schools depleted the CIP infrastructure renewal fund. In a moment, I'll ask Mr. O'Neill to explain our funding options for these 2 schools, which are not great. Before that, I want to say that I did not consider it an option to ask these 2 school communities to wait for the new fiscal year to have their stadia lights replaced. Therefore, I requested that staff move forward with the project and prepare this award. Another factor is that unlike with Liberty and Westminster, where we were fortunate that the vendor had 2 units already manufactured, for these schools, the units will need to be manufactured, then shipped to the schools for installation. In other words, time is of the essence for us to act to meet our goal of having the lighting structures in place for most of the spring season. As I asked Mr. O'Neill to explain funding options that we may have, I also wanted to share that I did contact Mr. Vigliotti, President of the Board of Commissioners, to explain the situation and our funding challenges. I did raise the question of whether the commissioners would consider assisting us with this effort. It was a positive conversation, but I did not make a formal request for specific funding without first having this discussion this evening.
So it's always great to return from a lovely winter break and on the first day walk into the boss's office and say, I have something to share with you.
We were just as surprised getting the phone call, I think, right? Speaking for my colleagues.
And it led to this conversation. And Dr. McCabe was very clear with me and Mr. Prokop that it is not an option to wait for these two communities to have to wait for the removal and replacement of their stadia lighting. What is different is where we sit with funding. When this occurred in the fall for Liberty and Westminster, we did have enough money in the local infrastructure renewal project, which is a project that was created, I think, around fiscal 18, and you have been funding it periodically from your fund balance as it's appropriate and as funding exists for that. The two installations at Liberty and Westminster reduced that project down to a level that won't fund these projects. And so the conversation with Dr. McCabe, which carries into tonight, was we don't have identified funding as I stand here this evening. There's not a place where we can say we'll go there and make this happen. And we're clear that we don't want to wait until fiscal 27, which means the spring season, if not some of the fall season, would not be under lights. So the options are within your own purview as a Board of Ed are that we could do a fund balance adjustment into the operating budget. As you know from all of our budget meetings and work sessions, we have wintered that money down to a place where it's at the sort of the low threshold of where we're supposed to have a fund balance under your policy, which in that those thresholds align with GASB 54 ruling. We could move forward now with the award and continue to monitor very closely, which we do anyway, the operating budget as fiscal year 26 winds down, and hope that there would be some savings in other categories of the budget that eventually at year end we could transfer in, and then after you would transfer it in, take it to the county commissioners for approval of that transfer, and that we would in the end be whole and solvent in fiscal 26 overall. Or we take that approach of monitoring the budget and hoping that we'll be able to identify enough funding at year end to transfer into this account or into this category, and if not, at that time, bring forward a budget adjustment to make sure that we're solvent as we close out fiscal 26. Those are the options that we have as I see them. And then there's the thing that Dr. McCabe mentioned, where she reached out to Commissioner Vigliotti. Their unassigned fund balance is in a little healthier state than ours at the moment, to see if the county commissioners would have any interest in maybe participating in this. They don't have a request, though. That was a conversation. There's been no formal action of this board to make a request to the county to consider that.
And we could make a request this evening. The board could make a request, and Mr. Zaleski would be here to hear that request.
With that in mind, I would like to make the request that we ask the county to participate in this lighting situation for us.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second for the Board of Education to make a formal request to the commissioners to assist replacement of the stadium lights at FSK and South Carroll High. Is there any discussion? I just have a question. I know that this figure is a little different than the last two that we, can you tell us, just for transparency, what did the,
yes,
I think the figure was between 800 and 900 for the last two schools. Why is this a little different?
We've included a little more work here. We moved just to, for the last two schools, we moved just to take down the old light posts and remove them. There's costs associated with that, and then to buy and install the new lighting structures. What we didn't do, and if you remember, we were operating kind of quickly and on the fly at the time. What we didn't do is consider the opportunity and need to replace 50-year-old wiring at the same time. And so this contract reflects that cost. We're going to have to go back to at least Westminster, I think, at least Westminster, to look at the wiring in the future as a separate cost. So this is a more complete cost to try to more proactively address all aspects of this.
Can you share with us whether there's a precedent for going to the commissioners outside of our CIP effort? Is that something that we've done in the past in our school system?
Not much, and certainly not in a typical or frequent kind of way. The only example that I've been able to come up with, and my history here is